I'm meant to propose that sex is a political category the way class is or race, and that one sex has dominated the life of the other sex all through recorded history, the whole patriarchal period, which is under the system, and a patriarchy is a kind of government. Under that, you know, all power of all institutions is in male hands, and females are second-class citizens and psychologically oppressed and kept out of all office of importance and significance in a culture and so on. And the world as we know it, it's a man's world.
I think I was always a feminist. There wasn't any place to put it for a long time. So then when it came along, I jumped right on. I thought it was splendid because I'd been thinking this in my mind all my life. And finally other people were saying this, and you weren't just crazy anymore. You weren't just some peculiar person with a hobby horse or a grudge against the world or someone who needed analysis or something like that. And then it just, it took up and swept, and it really changed my life as an artist as well. And I couldn't have, say, written, I don't think, if I hadn't had the kind of energy that the support of other women, especially around sexual politics, I mean, thinking and saying the same kind of stuff. So that this sort of argument, which had been going on in my mind since I was a kid even, suddenly there were, it just sort of, came together into a sort of a ball, and it, rolled and went and so on. And I don't think I would have faced down Columbia University and turned it into a thesis either, if it hadn't been for my friends. People like T. Grace, for example, that I used to go to meetings with when there were only 15 people in the whole movement in New York, stuff like that, and Lila. And all of what I said in Sexual Politics is what we used to say to each other all the time. The first French woman writer that made a big impact on me, of course, was Simone de Beauvoir, with The Second Sex, which I read when I was a student at Oxford. And it confirmed everything, and so forth. And I was profoundly impressed by that book. And I think that was the sort of undercurrent of my whole time at Oxford, in fact, was absorbing that book. At another level, I had to learn from my examinations, but more than anything else I read the whole time I was at Oxford, and it was not required reading, of course. I was reading a course in English literature. that confirmed all my perceptions about the world. Then I came home and I taught in America, and I became a sculptor, and then I went to Japan for 2 years. And when I came home, I really had a lot of naive ideas, thinking, well, Japan's a really heavy place to be a woman, and the oppression of women is so gross and obvious and so on. But back home in America, it was awful, because I got home in America and I couldn't even get a job for 80 days with this fancy education of mine and all the rest. And I was just at this appropriate moment that I hit on Betty Friedan's book, which explained, in the way that Simone de Beauvoir's book explained the world, and Friedan's book explained the United States and the first feminist wave, and then the hiatus, the counter-revolution, the death of that feminism, and it's sort of, called for another one to come and so forth. We're all the time having to fight the exterior world and all that, which is a very real set of conditions in which all power is in male hands and so on and so forth. But so much of the problem is in us too, and really in us, in our own, in all the damage that's been done to us, up to this point, up to this very day. Younger women probably will have less of that to hassle. Older women have more of it. But it's how many days and moments you've been immersed in a really unfriendly, unfamiliar, destructive set of psychic forces, of attitudes about yourself. And if it were just a matter of changing discrimination or something, we could write up a whole series of laws and paste them all over, and that'd be it. But with women, just as with any oppressed group, the thing gets interiorized, and it you know, it rots our souls too, so that we really have a cause to say, look, we really not only have been, you know, discriminated against and treated unfairly and so on, but, you know, like seriously aggrieved and destroyed in a sense. And we have to fight back for all the inches of our souls that have been eroded by this, you know. And that's very hard. The whole confidence to be. So much of that was just kicked out of us by the time we were 5 or 6 years old. So that while whatever we achieve is twice as hard, and in a sense is earned with greater difficulty and honor even. But what a waste. Why should it be so hard, you know? Why should we be having to just like fight for the lost ground in our own souls and hearts and our own sense of ourselves and so on? And that's the thing I think I resent the most, is that the way the sense of self is eroded in us. All that standing around and trembling and wondering if you can do it business. And I spent a lot of my life doing that. And then a little bit after that, a very important thing happened, and that is, and I came out in favor of gay liberation and caused a great stir and so forth. All of which was a tremendous personal trauma for me as well. Not only my own ambiguous position in supporting both gay liberation and the women's movement, and certain people in the women's movement saying this is not politic, this is not expedient, hush hush, we need respectability, and so on, and my knowing that morally that's the worst kind of compromise and expediency, and so dishonest. Also, as someone gay, I couldn't deny gay liberation, and as any thinking person, the whole connection between women's liberation and gay liberation is so obvious, and here two groups so oppressed for so many of the same reasons. Well, it's all very easy to make these, you know, political pronouncements, you know. I had a lot of trouble with my family. I had a lot of uncertainty in myself. I had the whole business of coming to terms with being gay was very hard for me. It was a real sort of terribly up and down, and a very difficult time, but it entirely changed my life. It also finally made me a much freer person to write what I wanted to, not to be dictated to by anybody. And so it made it possible for me to become a writer, not just an author, but a writer in the sense of a serious, you know, writing, as an artist. And that was a tremendous, that was like such a gift to be able to go ahead and do that. If you were black, you'd really find it hard having close friendships with white racists, and there are degrees and degrees of races, even given that everybody's got some. Sexism's like that too. I've had a long and very beautiful relationship with a man, Fumio Yoshimura, the sculptor, and for a long 10 years or so. But I also feel, as many women feel now, very much closer to other women than they do to men, which is sort of part of a whole, we're going towards, I think, a society where it will be possible for people to love as a matter of indifference even, a man or a woman, as it would be easily ethnic group or religious group or economic group or nationality or all the other little insuperable barriers we managed to get across finally. Sort of a great project now, women discovering ourselves, expressing ourselves. It's a tremendously euphoric time to be a woman or a woman writer or a woman artist or or around the women's movement, or whether you have nothing to do with it. Still, there's this is a whole class of people, you know, oppressed for just millennium, suddenly, you know, like breathing air and drinking in the light. That we find each other, that we find in each other a very special rapport now. I think it's very natural too. For me now, women are the interesting people. I like men, but women fascinate me now, and the elan, this sort of kind of discovery that we're engaged in now is the most interesting thing there could be now. Well, it's not as simple as it used to be when we were trying to integrate the want ads in the New York Times, you know. And the whole business of a struggle for human freedom becomes bigger and more definite. I mean, easier to understand, but harder to change. It got to be, you know, like a sort of a bigger and bigger and bigger set of concerns. And by the time you're concerned with political prisoners, you've acquired a much more international viewpoint. You're more interested not in nations and their silly nationalisms and all that, but questions of, say, civil rights and human rights all over the world, regardless of who's running their government or who's stomping on human beings in this place or another, and things like torture and the heinousness and hideousness of torture.